In this video, we're going to look at transporting SAP HANA models from system to system. In this example, I'm going to build an attribute view, export the attribute view, delete the attribute view from my main system, and then re-import the attribute view. So to do this, we need to launch the SAP HANA Studio. And the first thing that you'll need to do is make sure that your modeler perspective is selected. So you can do this by clicking on your open perspectives on the top right hand side, select other, and making sure that the modeler perspective is selected. So the first thing we're going to do is have a look at the data. So I've got a schema called STS, and I'm going to build an attribute view based on one of the tables. In this example, it's the DIM customer table. So of course we build our models within the content folder, and the first thing that we need to build is a new package, which is essentially a container. I've called this STS, and then I'm going to click on OK. Now within the STS folder we can build our new attribute view. The method I'm showing you will work for all different types of views. So we build a new attribute view. I'm going to call this STS_ATT_view. Select the description and then click on Next. We're only going to have one table in this attribute view from the STS schema called DIM Customers, and then I will click on Finish. So the first thing that we need to do in our attribute view is select our key attribute. So this is normally a primary key, so you can select that by selecting the column, right click and say Add as Key Attribute. Then we can add any of the other columns we want to be contained within this view. So in this example, I'm going to add company name, press Control, select city name, country name, and region name. I'll then right click and select Add as Attribute. The last thing we need to do is validate the view by selecting the Save and Validate icon. And lastly, we need to save and activate the object. So now if I expand my package and expand my list of attribute views, I should be able to right click on the attribute view and see any of the attributes within that view. So firstly, how do we extract or how do we export this view? Well, it's very straightforward. So I'm just going to close all of these windows. The first thing we need to do is go to File and select Export. Within the list of 5 folders, you need to select the SAP HANA content folder and make sure that you select Developer Mode. Then you'll click on Next. The next thing you need to do is select the source system where the model comes from, which in our example is HDB, and then click Next. Then you need to select which objects you want to be extracted. So if I expand the content folder and I extract the package and the view, I'm going to select the single view that we created called STS Attribute View and click on Add. Of course, because the view is contained within the package, the STS package will also be migrated. The last step is to choose which folder you want the export to be done in, to be carried out in, and I'm going to select the desktop, click OK, and then click Finish. So we can see that the export has completed successfully. Now if I minimize my modeler and go into the folder, you can see essentially what we have within this STS folder is an STS properties file. If I edit this with Notepad, we can see that it's just giving us some information on the name of the package and the description of the package. If I go further into the attribute views, we have a file called stsattView.attributeView. So this is the actual extract file. Again, if I right click and go to edit with Notepad, you'll see an XML description of the attribute view. Of course, this is a very good way of examining the metadata within the attribute view as well. And of course, you can test this by modifying objects in the attribute view. So for example, I could change the name of the schema name. If I've got a development and a production schema name, I can change the columns, so on and so forth. So to demonstrate this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into my model there. I'm going to delete the view. And I'll also delete the package which the view is contained in. And lastly, I'll clear any log. So now we can assume we've got an empty system. The only thing that we're assuming, of course, is that the table structure is the same with which the views are based on. So of course you need the table which the view was based on. So to import the model, it's the reverse of what we did before. We go to File, Import. Again, we select Developer Mode and then click Next. Again, we select the target system this time, click Next. And lastly, we need to choose where the location of the export file is. So I'm going to browse and again go to my desktop and click on OK. So of course it's going to look for anything that matches the properties file, and then within that it's going to look for that attribute view file. So we can see here, if I expand, I've got the HDB database, the STS package, and lastly we've got that attribute view at the bottom. So I'll select the attribute view and click on Add, and we can see that also the package will be created. If any objects already exist, we can choose to override any existing objects, and then we just need to click Finish. So we can see the import was completed successfully, and the only thing we actually have to do is if I expand STS, expand the attribute view, is at the moment we can't view the data within the attribute view because it's not been activated. So the last thing that we need to do is right click on the attribute view, select Activate, and when it's been activated, of course, we can right click on that view, and again we can see the data within the data preview window. So that's a very simple example on how we can move models in the form of attribute, calculation or analytic views from one system to another within the SAP HANA Studio.